Hi, this is the artist lecture for Set 7. This is possibly my favorite unit because it's where we kind of start digging deep. So you should have read chapter 3, which emphasizes symbols, symbolism, metaphors, analogy. I read that a couple weeks ago. We talked about sign and symbols in that lecture, so you may want to go back and kind of look on it. We're definitely building on our creative process and critical thinking lecture. There are two sort of worksheets. So instead of the traditional questionnaire, which serves as like an artist's statement, the worksheets are planning guides, and they are to kind of help you get from idea to what you're working with. They're only worth 5 points, but they're really important to turn in so I could see your process. They kind of step things out and also can understand your idea too. So you need to absolutely turn them in. If you doodle on pieces of paper, just take pictures, rewrite it up. The in-person class gets actual physical handouts so they can turn in, but since we're online, you're going to hand them in digitally. And if it is a couple different things you kind of piece together or links, that will be fine. And these are going to kind of dive deep, and I'm really excited. So we're going to start off with art and issue, which is 3.5. So this could be in any form. It has a minimum size requirement of 8 by 8 inches, but you can use Photoshop, Illustrator, you can do illustration, any sort of digital method that you are comfortable with. This is going to be as open as you want it to be. We'll kind of talk about throughout this lecture about your process and ideas. But when you pick something, you want it to you want to narrow down to something more specific. And then, so if you have a big open idea such as animal welfare, and you are an animal lover and you want to do some animal welfare, well, what about animal welfare? Do you want to focus on dogs and dog breeding practices? That's a very specific thing. Maybe you take it down to a specific thing, like Shiba Inus being overbred. And I say that because my Shiba Inu is staring at me right now. Maybe you talk about horses. Maybe you don't like that horses are used in a police police context. Maybe you're against that. Maybe you say they should be free running, just like the free horses by the Salt River. So you can have your big overarching idea. You just want to narrow it down. I also want to say, please don't put text. We'll talk about it throughout, but if you use text, usually you tell the viewer what you want them to think or feel, rather than showing them. Now, text is great for more design practices, and especially when you take the graphic design courses and typography courses, they do a lot on text, which is awesome. But I really want to step away from text because a lot of times it's telling us what we need to know rather than showing us, and then we get it and we move on. So a lot of times art and issue brings things that we know and then flips it. So with this image, there's a lot of text, which isn't the best because I said no text, but there's the bottle that's, it's got the skull and crossbones. It's kind of this old-timey glass bottle, the sign that says do not swallow, which kind of mimics, pulls a little bit of the ideas from Alice in Wonderland, drink me, don't drink me, and then thinking about matching things up. Now, speaking of text, so you have this image here. So this image would be very powerful without the text. Maybe the exact capitalist idea may not be translated, but you get an idea of what's going on. And speaking of flipping the script, so we're withholding something that is necessary, like water. And we've all put on the hose and sort of kind of pinch in a knot, and it doesn't get the water flowing. And that's sort of this purposeful thing where someone checks it out and you unleash it and there's water everywhere. But there's something about that gesture that's very simple but works well here. So maybe taking something that we see often and putting it into a different context, which is a lot of what art does, is we take something, we reframe it in a different lens. So taking the don't shoot gesture and placing it into a sculpture, a very beautiful, loving bronze sculpture. I think they're bronze or brass. And placing it into a gallery context maybe flips it a little. You want to think about all the elements that you place within your image. So everything's going to be important. You made the choice to show it to us. And you want to think about how an image makes you feel. And taking things that we may see often and kind of flipping it, using things that are a little more perverse together. We're bringing forth together synetics. See, the textbook is paying off. So everyone's aware of the sand timer. And I remember getting one when brushing my teeth when I got braces to make sure I did a whole 2 minutes, and I had to flip it, and then I got an electric toothbrush. I didn't need it. But the point is, everyone's aware of this thing. It's very common. So taking things that are commonplace and putting into a different context gives the viewer, hey, I know what sand timers do. I understand that concept. This one's a little different. Why is it different? Why are these things connecting to something else? How does this make you feel? These are sculptures about 6 foot tall. Does it make you feel uncomfortable? A little itchy? So sometimes we need to provoke people, especially with art and issue. You get that sharp reaction. You got their attention. And then they're thinking about how it makes them feel, and they're relating their feeling to seeing the work, but also the message and the intent of what's going on. Put companies on blast. Definitely don't shy or hide behind anything within your art and issue. Sometimes you have to be something so simple. So what does a barbed wire connotate? So it's a fence, so it's defining some sort of inside-outside relationship. But it's also violent. So not only are you defining areas between inside and outside, or yes or no, but it's something that's very physically painful, where to get in or out, you're physically going to be hurt to make that attempt. So there's something so violent about it that it makes you think about the fence and everything that it makes us feel. And then you have one of the barbed that kind of looks like a person putting their hands up. And it's escaping, and there's something about the escape, and you can kind of, I mean, it's not there, but you can see this joy that radiates on this little figure. And like, wow, there's something very powerful over this, something very simple. So the text, again, this would be so much stronger without that text. Very striking. But sometimes text can be used strong. Now, I always say, if you're going to break a rule, break it well. And Barbara Kruger, with her work, she breaks it very well. And she might be someone to look at, Barbara Kruger. A lot of times, things for art and issue become posters, campaigns for nonprofits. So you may work on these skills and think, wow, I can make a difference with using my work by aligning myself with an organization that cares about the things I care, and I can use my work, my digital skills to illustrate. And it's not necessarily something heavy all the time. It doesn't have to be, it could be things in society that kind of irritate you, or I say piss you off. Social media, a few of these images will touch on social media and its consumption, and there's something very playful about this. Maybe you chose to kind of show different sides. So in your planning guide, you have to look at the opposite. So maybe putting both and bringing them together shows the multiple viewpoints. You may choose something, just draw something in Illustrator. So if you have a drawing tablet, we have them on campus. So if you are on campus, rooms 201 and 204 during open lab hours have drawing tablets. That might be something to play around with. You can have some sort of sake of humor. So we looked at having your audience approach the work in something that's very jarring. But sometimes having your audience approach the work in something in a humorous lens has them pull it in very differently, and they have that entrance and they're laughing and they think, well, why am I laughing? Oh wait, this is true. There's always truth in sadness. And we'll talk more about humor in the next few weeks. And sometimes it's not about showcasing the negative with your art and issue, but it's about lifting someone up. And maybe you choose to honor someone within your art and issue, someone who may not be seen in the public, or maybe someone who people aren't listening to their voice. Maybe you approach a simple collage technique. So you want to think about how you frame everything in, and this one I had a few problems with. Mostly because that chair that the woman is sitting on is very out of place. Who sits in a dining room chair on a blanket in front of their mirror? No one. So if you have to think about all the elements. So if it's something you may want to approach, something you take photographs of yourself and you want to photo manipulate, you want to make sure everything's within the frame that makes sense. So that chair doesn't make sense to me, so I'm not believing it. So maybe you think of the vanity, or maybe they're standing or crouching to work in with those elements. So a link that you may want to check out. So a lot of times illustrations, so if you're doing art and issue illustrations, they're covers of magazines, or they're in sort of comics. Maybe you take something that people are aware of, so even you can reference other art pieces and flip it and improve it. Shepard Fairey does a lot of stuff. He did the Obama Hope campaign. So some comics, political comics, might be some inspiration. So what if your artwork pisses someone else off? Maybe you present a viewpoint that may be a little touchy. Now, I say go for it. Now, part of the planning guide is research. You have to be fully aware of part of your opinion before you make art. You need to know every element. So if someone brings up an opposing opinion about your work piece, you can defend it. You can say, this is what I feel and this is what I believe, and I've done my research and this is how I'm executing it. So when you put something that may be a little iffy or touchy, that may be a controversial topic, don't shy away because you don't want to step on toes or think that I may not like it or someone else in the class may not like it. But if you do so, you have to be aware of what people may say about your piece and your process, and you have to have ownership over it. So if you're not going to have ownership over it, it's not strong. Speaking of comics, you may use like multiple panels to get your point across. That might be a form to go around. There's no text, but we can definitely get what's going on here. This is a link, cartoonmovement.com. I have a lot of political comics that might be of interest for you if that's something you may want to explore. Student work. So this student talked a lot about loneliness and loneliness feeling like death. Think about the water pipeline, or not the water pipeline, the Keystone pipeline that was going to leak into water, and that's why they made this piece. Now I said, don't use text, but I also say if you're going to break my rules, break them well, and this is an example of breaking the rules well. So you may have some humor about this. Put humor in your work. If it's going to be a little controversial, that's fine. Don't shy away from it. And think about all the elements. This piece was so good because of all the extra elements within the water label. So I want you to have fun with your art and issue and do something you're passionate about. I always joke around the in-person class, what pisses you off the most? Can't think of something? Go on Facebook. Get in some Facebook fights. Go to the comments section. Do something you're passionate about, because that's going to shine through. Because if you do something you're not passionate about it's not going to be as strong. Myth making. So this is the other part. So myth making is going to be basic on storytelling. So like before, you can do collage, you can do illustration, you can do all sorts of things for the digital component. It doesn't necessarily have to be a Greek or Roman or Egyptian myth. It could be a story, it could be a true story, it could be a fable. But the point I want you to cross is storytelling. So this also has a planning guide, so you want to be able to narrow down your story. Think about your key elements, key colors, symbols that you can get across. Maybe you tell the whole story in one image and there's different parts and components. Or maybe you tell the key moment in it, the rising action, the climax within your frame. You can choose to use multiple frames, but I feel like it's always best when it's executed as one. Again, try not to use words. You can do all sorts of things, and they're always going to be interpreted in different ways. So thinking of the key elements and how they are illustrated here. So this is digital painting and sort of this digital collage of these different elements working together. So if you were a Latin nerd, like I was in high school, you have all your favorite Greek and Roman myths you can pull from and want to illustrate. Now, a lot of times this will have to take someone being informed of the myth for them to understand, which is fine. But this sort of skill could be great for storytelling, illustration, all sorts of things. How do we tell a story within an image? And it's always very fun to kind of think about the key elements, key characters, how it's been best described. So there's a lot of sort of different mythologies, fables, stories. I encourage using something that's a little bit more common. So more people can get a part of the story or kind of get an idea of it, and we can have the discussion over it. And that way you can do your research and see how else it's been shown within documentation as well. How other people have approached this idea. So there's a lot of different ways to approach this. A lot of these things are sort of fine, beautiful drawing, illustration renderings to go with sort of storytelling books. But you may want to modernize it a bit. Make it more contemporary. So you may be inspired with sort of this sort of historical painting, or you may want to maybe contemporize it as well. Or maybe even take it down. So Pandora's box, thinking of what that is, there's a lot of reiterations of Pandora's box within this, and also the student work examples. But there's so many different ways to illustrate it. You want to become fairly well versed in the story, and a lot of times if it is translated from a different language, it's been translated in many different ways. So to think about how many different ways can you tell a single story. Maybe it's the same thing, maybe the same basic story is in Arabic, it's in English, it's in French, it's in Latin, and how it's been told in those forms, but it's still the same base story. That might be of interest to you as well. So many different ways this story has been told, and so many different visual images from it. It's Narcissus, but in a social media age. Student work. So a lot of students who like to do digital painting definitely love this assignment. Maybe really try your hand and practice on your composite techniques. Now you have like 2 full weeks next week. The only thing you'll be working is this assignment. I may put some articles up for you guys to Be runner jars. Think about this assignment. Pandora's box. I think this was like Alice in Wonderland inspired. Another Pandora's box. Thinks Icarus, you flew too close to the sun. Very simple, but we get the idea. So there's many ways to approach this. Definitely practice on your storytelling techniques and practices. It's going to be very fun, and I'm excited to see what you go on. There's a planning guide as well. I'll definitely check in on you guys in a few weeks just to see how you progress within the next week, not weeks. Probably at the end of the week I may check in, see what your ideas across, kind of work with you more individually. I believe a lot of you guys really got a lot from that. So if you didn't respond last time, that's fine. But I will ask you in a few weeks, see how you, not a few weeks, few days, to see how you're doing. So I'm excited for this. It's probably one of my favorite units, and I will check on you soon.